Phanteks Intel Pro M tempered glass mid-tower. Using a screwdriver, counterclockwise the two screws to remove the right panel. Remove the box within the case. This contains the necessary screws to install the components. Next is to uninstall the tempered glass panel. Peel the corners of the glass protector tape, and from each corner counterclockwise the thumb screws by hand. Carefully hold the tempered glass and pull from the top until you're able to lift the glass panel and place it somewhere safe. From the right side of the case, undo the Velcro straps and wires. From the front panel, hold down the case, while grab and hold the bottom of the panel and pull away. Counterclockwise each 4 screws to uninstall Phanteks front 140mm case fans. There are 2 Halos RGB fan frames that come with this case. It's your choice to reuse them or not. They do require a special connection, so this may determine how you control your RGB. From the front panel, remove the 5.25-inch bake cover. Gigabyte Z390 Aorus Elite ATX LGA 1151. Peel off the plastic protector from the motherboard's heatsink shield. Counterclockwise to uninstall the M.2 heatsink. The M.2 standoff with the screw provided by the motherboard. Samsung's 970 EVO 500GB NVMe M.2. By hand, clockwise the M.2 standoff to number 80. Now install the M.2 SSD 2280 to M.2A's socket. Clockwise the M.2 screw to finish installing the M.2 SSD. The last part is to install the M.2 heatsink. Peel off the plastic to officially use the M.2 heatsink's thermal pad. Insert the M.2 heatsink just above the M.2 SSD with M.2A in line with number 110. Use the screw that came with the M.2 heatsink and clockwise the screw. Cooler Master's Master Air G100M RGB contents. The backplate, Intel side. The 4 standoff holders. The 4 clips that secure the standoff holders. Place each standoff holder in the narrow hole and near the edge of it. You'll combine the clip with the standoff holder to keep them in place. The clip needs to be pushed in until it reaches to the first indented line. When all 4 standoff holders and clips are combined, this finishes the backplate, making this ready to be behind the motherboard. The 4 spacer standoffs. Clockwise each spacer standoff to the standoff holders. Use a driver socket with a 3/16 bit to tighten the spacer standoffs. G-Skill's Tritent Z RGB 2x16GB at 3000 MHz. Push down each latch for 2 of the DIMM slots, which are DDR4 B1 and DDR4 A1. Align each RAM to the DIMM slot and push down on each side until it's fully installed. Should hear a click or check the RAM is fully inserted by both sides evenly. Now push the CPU lever down and move it to the side. When the lever is free, then pull it up and along with the metal cover. Remove the socket cover ahead of time. Intel's 8-core i7-9700K at 3.6 GHz, turbos at 4.9 GHz. Align the CPU's 2 notches with the alignment keys and align the CPU's triangle pin 1 to the pin 1 corner, or the triangle mark. Return the CPU's lever and the metal cover under the screw. Push the lever down and tuck it under the metal cover to finish installing the CPU. Cooler Master's Master Air G100M copper heatsink. The CPU cooler's 2 brackets with screws. Place the bracket to each side of the plate, then clockwise each screw to install the brackets. You don't need to do this by hand, but use a precision screwdriver. A PH0 works best for this. Thermal Grizzly Cryo Knot 1 gram. Apply a BB size or a pea size of the thermal paste onto the center of the CPU. My attempt appears to be the pea size. Cooler Masters Master Air G100M RGB. The next step is to align the brackets with the standoff spacers. The brackets are shaped into an X if you notice this. Don't forget to peel off the plastic from the copper ring. When ready, then it's time to officially install the CPU cooler. Remember about the CPU cooler brackets having 3 circular holes? This varies per motherboard, but for this particular motherboard, the holes will align to the center hole with each bracket. The 4 hex nuts to fasten the CPU cooler. I'm doing this by hand first, where it's not a tight space. You can certainly use a hex nut wrench, just don't tighten all the hex nuts quite yet. And I'm installing each hex nut like an X. In other words, I'm installing each hex nut in a form like an X. This is the tightest space of them all, hence requires patience. To tighten the hex nuts, I will try using the provided hex nut wrench. It doesn't seem to work too well with this tight space. Okay, that's enough. Fast forward. Use a 3/8 inch hex nut wrench to make this easier to grip. Remember to only clockwise the hex nut until it stops moving. Do not over torque these by force. The last and final hex nut. When done clockwising the hex nut, then this officially completes installing the CPU cooler. Now connect the CPU cooler's 4-pin connector to CPU fan. Bind the excess wire with a zip tie and tuck it under the CPU cooler. Use a wire cutter to cut off the excess zip tie. Connect the 4-pin 12-volt GRB connector to LED C2. Again, bind the excess wire with a zip tie and tuck it under the CPU cooler. The I/O shield is already attached with the motherboard, so don't worry placing this within the case ahead of time. The 9 motherboard standoffs are correctly formatted for an ATX. Align the motherboard with the I/O in its standoffs. The 9 motherboard screws. You do not need the nylon washers. It's another way to prevent a short upon the motherboard or to reduce wear. Realistically, use them if the motherboard holes has worn out its metal, or combine them with the standoffs to lift the motherboard. You should see 9 motherboard holes aligned with the standoffs. Clockwise each screw, but do not completely install them just yet. Have a partial install screw helps with adjustments if necessary. Be patient with the top left corner because the motherboard's shield heatsink can make this section tight. Now finish tightening the motherboard screws if necessary. Clockwise them until no longer able to. Do not over-torque. EVGA's GQ 650 watt semi-modular power supply. Keep the power supply's fan facing down and slide it in. This location is underneath the shroud of the case. Also align the holes between the power supply and the case. Not able to see from this angle? The 4 power supply screws provided by the power supply. Clockwise each power supply screw with the aligned holes. Phanteks 24-pin extension cable, black and white. Connect the 24-pin EPS extension cable to the power supply's 24-pin connector. Extension cables can easily fit or require effort to connect each other. You do not need power supply extension cables. If interested for aesthetics, then there's easy do-it-yourself, Up Here, Link Up, Asia Horse, Rated, and much more. Route the 24-pin cable through the top middle grommet. Connect the 24-pin connector to ATX. The 8-pin EPS CPU cable and Phanteks 8-pin EPS extension cable. Connect the 8-pin EPS CPU cable to CPU 2 or CPU 1. Right now this is to do a post. This could change or remain the same depending upon the cable management. Same method as before, connect Phanteks 8-pin EPS extension cable to the power supply's 4+4 pin connector. Route the 8-pin cable through the top left hull section. By this angle of the case, it's on the right. You could also route where the top grommet is at instead of the hull, but it's your choice. Connect the 4+4 pin CPU connector to ATX 12V 2x4. The 2-pin power switch. The 2-pin hard drive disk LED positive and negative. Route the power switch in the hard drive disk LED positive and negative wires through the middle bottom hole. The G connector, provided by Gigabyte's C390 motherboard, uses to easily organize and connect the front panel wires. Showing this up close to be seen better with the G connector, match each wire for what is labeled on this connector. So at the bottom of the G connector, insert the HDD LED positive and negative to HD positive and negative. At the top of the G connector, insert the power switch to PW positive and negative. Sorry for my camera being out of focus here. Now insert the HDD LED positive and negative to G connector's HD positive and negative. Next is to insert the power switch to G connector's PW positive and negative. Connect the G connector to the F panel. This connects only one way, but basically the PW positive and negative is at the top, while the HDD positive and negative is at the bottom of the F panel. The 9-pin HD audio. Route the HD audio to the right bottom hull section. Connect the HD audio to F audio. The 3.0 USB. Route the 3.0 USB to the top center grommet. I tucked the 3.0 USB between the 24-pin cables to have them appear in sync in a more clean format. Now connect the 3.0 USB to F USB 3.0. Do a post without a monitor and peripherals to see if the main components work, so connect the AC power cord to the power supply. Press the switch to 1. Connect the power supply's AC power cord to the outlet. At the top of the case, press the power button. This is the second post result. The first post was successful, but the computer power cycled twice. It detected the CPU, VGA, RAM, etc., but it could not detect the peripherals. Regardless, this passed the minimum post. This appears to be a good sign because the computer remains on. Press the power button again to turn off the computer. Remember to disconnect the power supply's power cord and wait for a minute or 2. You want the electricity to be fully depleted before touching the components again. If necessary, pull out the cables near the power supply to finish connecting the SATA, PCIe, and the second CPU EPS cables. The 8-pin 6+2 PCIe cable. Connect the PCIe 8-pin to the power supply's VGA 2. I disconnected the cables to make this easier to see. You do not need to disconnect the cables as I did. The 8-pin EPS CPU cable. Reconnect the 8-pin EPS CPU connector to CPU 2. Connect the second 8-pin EPS CPU connector to CPU 1. The two 6-pin SATA cables. Connect one of the 6-pin SATA cables to SATA 1. Connect the second 6-pin SATA cable to SATA 3. Remove the two toolless storage brackets, pitch from each side of the bracket and pull away. Samsung's 850 Pro Series 1TB. The 4 screws for the 2.5-inch solid-state drive. Place the solid-state drive onto the center of the toolless bracket, and underneath the bracket install the solid-state drive with 4 screws. Seagate's FireCUDA 2TB 7200 RPM hybrid. The 4 screws for the 3.5-inch hard drive. Now place the hard drive onto the center of the toolless bracket. Align the hard drive with the bracket's 4 single pins into the hard drive. Confirm all the single pins are securely attached to the hard drive. Place each toolless bracket back to where they were in the storage cage. Top bracket is the SSD, and the bottom bracket is the hybrid HDD. Do double check the toolless brackets are secure into the storage cage. Now use a power supply SATA to power the SSD and HDD. Connect each PSU SATA to the SSD and HDD. You may gently bend the wires ahead of time before doing so. The 2 SATA cables, right angle and straight. Connect each SATA cable to the SSD and HDD. I'll connect the right angle SATA cable to the HDD and the straight SATA cable to the SSD. A better format is using 2 straight angle SATA cables if you don't plan to add any more storage or an optical drive, which also needs a SATA cable. From the motherboard, connect the straight SATA SSD to SATA 2. Now connect the right-angle SATA HDD to SATA 3. Anidees AI Aureola 140mm 3-pack set. The RGB remote and fan hub is included. Combine each Halo's RGB fan frame with the front 140mm case fans. Clockwise each screw that already came with the default case fans. You do not have to reuse the RGB fan frames, it's your choice. It may be easier to place a screw with the front case fan while trying to align with the hole from the case. You may be aware about this, but these case fans are positioned as intake, thus the cold air is being pulled inside the case. Wherever a sticker is located at, or some directional arrows, this may indicate where the air cycles through the case fan. Or just spin the fan with your finger and feel the airflow being pulled in. Route the case fans and the RGB fan frame wires through this middle section hole that is in between the front case fans. The 4 case fan screws. Now place the 140mm case fan at the top back of the case and clockwise each screw. Use 4 of the provided case fan screws. This fan is in exhaust position, which pulls warm air out of the case. From the Phanteks case is the 4-pin LED connectors and its SATA. Connect the Phanteks SATA with a power supply SATA. This is to power the Halos RGB and for Phanteks RGB LED strips if purchased them. I did not purchase Phanteks LED strips for this build. Reconnect the Halos RGB's 4 pins with the Phanteks case 4 pins. Fan Hub provided by Anidees supports 8 of their fans and 2 RGB strips. Connect each case fan's 5-pin to the fan hub's fan interface section. These case fans only connect to their own fan hub, and not the motherboard. Connection for each case fan will be based upon your cable management, and this is changeable when rearranging the wires. This fan hub is magnetized capable. It can be placed behind the case or where this works best with the wire layout. Connect the provided SATA's 4-pin to SATA wire. This will power the fan hub when it's connected to the power supply. A close-up of the connected 4-pin to SATA wire. The SATA from the fan hub. The SATA power supply connector. Connect the power supply SATA with the fan hub SATA. The cable management will vary for you. I try to keep the wires reachable and easy to connect each other. The second EPS 4+4 pin cable with Phanteks 4+4 EPS extension cable. Connect the second EPS 8-pin to CPU 1 or CPU 2. Route the second EPS CPU cable's 4-pin through the top hole. Connect the 4-pin EPS CPU to ATX 12V 2X2. LG's WH14NS40 Blu-ray DVD CD writer. Insert the optical drive to the 5.25-inch bay. Easier to do this before reinstalling the case's front panel. Now reinstall the front panel to the case. Adjust the optical drive to appear aligned with the front panel. The 4 screws for the optical drive. Clockwise each screw to install the optical drive. This is all one-sided. Now use a power supply SATA to power the optical drive. Use a straight SATA cable to the optical drive. Route the power supply SATA through the grommet and connect it to the optical drive. Now route a straight angle SATA cable through the grommet and connect it to the optical drive. Connect the straight angle SATA cable to SATA 3.0. Back to the PCIe 6+2 pin and 8-pin cable. Remember, this is only for the graphics card. The 6+2 pin PCIe extension cable. Connect the PCIe extension cable to the power supply's PCIe 6+2 pin connector. With a screwdriver, counterclockwise the two PCI slots from the case. You need to remove these slots to install the graphics card to the PCIe X16. Push down the PCIe latch. The ASUS GTX 1060 6GB. Don't forget to remove the silicone or plastic cover from the interface, and it's better to remove the GPU's video port covers ahead of time. Align the graphics card's interface with the PCIe X16 slot. Also align the dual slots with the two empty PCI slots from the case. Gently push down the GPU starting from the latch and back to the slots. Now reinstall the two PCI screws. Be patient with yourself when trying to align the screw between the PCI holes. Some cases, such as this one, may be a tight space. Remember, it's clockwise for each PCI screw. The PCIe extension cable is routed through the shroud grommet. Connect the 6+2-pin PCIe to the GTX 1060's PCIe 8-pin connector. This provides the necessary additional power for the graphics card. Combine 2 or 3 4+4 cable cones with a PCIe extension. These are provided by Phanteks. Easier to grab one wire at a time and push the wire into the cable comb. Can also do this with 2 wires at the same time. The final result of the cable comb PCIe extension cable. Use 12+12 cable combs for the 24-pin EPS extension cable. Use 4+4 cable combs for the 4+8-pin EPS extension cables. The PCIE WiFi Gigabytes GC-WB867D-I. Connect the provided USB cable to the Wi-Fi's FUSB 1. Your preference for which PCIe X1, 3 or 4, I'm removing the very bottom PCI slot from the case, counterclockwise to install the PCI slot. Install the Wi-Fi to PCIe X1 4. Hook the excess USB wires to the shroud of the case. Connect the USB to FUSB 2. Connect and tighten the antenna cables to the antenna connectors. Remember, it's clockwise for each antenna. This antenna is magnetized so it can locate anywhere outside of the case. Do locate the antenna where it has good signal. The two RGB LED strips with RGB header and extensions. Connect each RGB LED strip with its 3-pin extension cable. One LED strip is hidden at the bottom of the case. The second LED strip is hidden at the top. Once finished routing the extension wires from behind the case, connect each 3-pin LED strip to the fan hub's LED. Cable management layout was bound like a rope when able. I used more cable cones for the extension cables to organize them. You may need to adjust the cables again, just make sure you can close with the panel on. Otherwise, reinstall the left panel. Clockwise the 2 screws that came with this panel. Optional, FS Labs GPU brace, upgraded black version. I removed one PCI screw from the center area of the brace and reinstalled the PCI screws at the top and bottom of the brace's holes. This is to properly install the GPU brace or use the provided screws. Use the small stand piece to prevent the GPU fans hitting the brace. Reconnect the AC power cord to the power supply. Set the power switch to 1. 1 means on, 0 means off. Connect the power cord to an outlet or a power surge or UPS. If using a power surge or UPS, then don't forget to turn it on. Press the power button from the case. This successfully powers on again, which is good. Turn off the computer by pressing the power button again. Now, carefully reinstall the tempered glass panel, while aligning the panel with the 4 holes. When ready, clockwise each thumb screw that came with the tempered glass panel. Remember, it's 4 total. And this completes building an RGB workstation computer. Thanks for watching!